So I'm with Gunther Verheyen, one of the Scrum gurus and also a person deeply involved in Scrum.org. What are you doing at Scrum.org?
Hi Andy, let me first say hi. At Scrum.org I do sort of two things. Internally I shepherd what we call the professional series. So the assessments we have around professional Scrum. For Scrum Masters, Product Owners, development teams and so on. So assessments, courseware, work with beautiful trainers like yourself.
Okay.
That's one part of my role. The second part is sort of replace Ken in Europe.
Okay.
So that's why I'm in beautiful country of Poland right now.
Great.
So representing Scrum.org and Ken around Europe.
Okay. So let's tap into your expertise right off the bat. So one question that I'm frequently asked by product owners is, as a product owner, how am I supposed to know or estimate or write down the value of the backlog items that I'm handling?
Well, the way I see it is the value of product backlog or product that you're creating is not necessarily in individual product backlog items. It's more like we see value, we would love to see value reflected in the ordering of the product backlog. What's the ordering, what's the sequencing things you want to have developed? And then ultimately, are you able to bring them to the market as a sort of final validation of your assumption of value? Because putting value on product backlog items may be nice, looks good, but it's an assumption, it's a prediction. You never know whether your prediction will be true or not if you don't bring your software to the market. So the ultimate validation of value is in bringing stuff to the market. And as a product owner, you rely on the professionalism of a development team in not only building your stuff, but building it in a way that it is releasable, so that at least as a product owner, by the end of every sprint, you might decide to actually release it. Because that's closing the feedback loop with your customers. Those are the people that will show you whether your assumption of value is actually true or not. And if you do that frequently enough, you'll get a good sense of what is working, what is not working. And then there's still the balance as a product owner you would be looking for, probably in not only sort of listening to your users and your market, but also try to be a bit more provocative and bring new things to the market and see whether they catch on. So, but in the end, value of product backlog is in the ordering of items on the product backlog and then bringing it to market.
So what would you recommend as the basis for ordering them? Is it just the product owner's gut feel, which is his intuition, his experience? Or would you recommend the product owner to, I don't know, try to use business value points to work with the stakeholders, which is another technique that is being used? Or there are other things. There is Tom Gilb's idea of quantifying goals and then trying to guess which functionality could bring us closer to that goal, then doing it, then measuring whether that was really the case, and if not, doing something else. So how would you recommend product owners to handle that?
Quantifying helps, certainly. I've worked with several people that actually try to do it. So thinking about what defines value for your product and making it tangible. Some criteria about customer satisfaction or customer delightment, whatever. Some criteria that will help you identify, quantify value. Putting that on product backlog items, fine, great, but don't overdo it. Because the ultimate validation is bringing that to the market. Because you can make up really detailed calculations, quantifications of stuff, and that's not necessarily helping you. It might even be draining you. And so quantifying helps. If you later on maybe inspect and adapt on your quantifications by seeing how the market actually receives you. So adjusting your quantifications and your calculations upon actual market reception, that's certainly a good thing to do. It's like not over-calculating. So we want product owners that have some sort of intuition of their market and their users and what might work or not. They can quantify it. That certainly helps in the communication with stakeholders about almost sometimes justifying why you order things on top of the product backlog. But in the end, ultimate validation is releasing to the market and see how they receive it.
Okay. So that's another thing that I'm frequently asked, because many product owners who come to my classes or that I work with, for different reasons, they are constrained in their releases so that they cannot release often. And it's not because of technical limitations of their team, but usually they are embedded in large organizations, and basically they are not able to do that. Either the product is of such nature that it's released once a year or once every 2 years, for example, software that goes with some piece of hardware on the market, or a computer game. That's another good example. It's being worked on for a long time and then released once. Or they are doing an internal product which doesn't go to the market at all. So what would you recommend to product owners in those circumstances?
Let me first of all say that internal products go to market too. There are users, there are people that are going to use and consume the software, so that's your market. So there are still users for it. So users are not only external people necessarily. So an internal product also has users and user satisfaction and all of the things. So that doesn't make a difference. That's exactly the same.
See, even Gunther says that. Yeah,
I imagine. So and the other aspect is the core purpose of Scrum. If Scrum was to be reduced to one purpose and one purpose only, it would be the creation of releasable increments. Why? Because that is the essential gateway towards what we call agility. Flexibility, responsiveness, adapting to new needs, new circumstances, things you didn't know of before. And if you can do that like every 1, 2, 3 weeks, every organization will have difficulties in creating actually releasable software. But that's the way to achieve agility. So Scrum applies empiricism to achieve agility. That's the goal of Scrum, and there will be many organizational constraints and boundaries that you run into. Yeah. But if at beyond sort of the Scrum team and the product owner role, at the organizational level, think of why are we doing Scrum? If it's about agility, then you might want to resolve some problems that impede your teams in actually producing releasable software.
Yeah, that's something when I'm talking about it, I call it business agility, which is the ability of an organization to basically monetize, turn the ability of their teams to frequently build releasable software into a market advantage, something that can be exploited on the business side. Maybe exploited is not a good word for it, but...
Yeah, I fully agree. Scrum is not an IT tool. Yeah. Scrum is a business tool. Scrum is a tool that allows you to capitalize on what we call opportunities. Be opportunistic, look for new opportunities, create opportunities, capitalize on something. Oh, there's an opportunity. We didn't know that before and we could have never planned for it. So, hey, by that ability to change and adapt, you can capitalize on new things frequently.
So, changing the subject a bit, another thing that I'm being asked about, and I want to see what your answers will be. What kind of metrics could we employ above the team level? So in a scenario where we have a couple of teams, maybe 10, maybe 8, and we would like to see whether they are overall delivering value and improving, which is a demand that comes usually from either IT or business management. How can we measure that? How can we be sure, aside from our gut feeling that things are more fun and the atmosphere is improving, because that can be felt?
Let me first start by saying that I like how you see measuring beyond the team level as a natural thing to do, because that seems to be not to be what most organizations think. Most organizations are focused on team and team performance, where actually it's a lean principle. Measure one level up. Don't measure the teams. Measure the outcome. Measure at the outside, the outside of your organization. So measure the impact that your software has or your products have on your users. Measure the value that the software brings to your organization. That is very different from the performance of team. It's a more holistic perspective. It's measuring the whole cycle, not just individual teams. Very good starting point. So, and I think the Agile movement was about value, valuable software, releasing it frequently to users, customers, valuable software. So measure how much value your software is bringing. And you might want to translate that into metrics. We've got some ideas that not only include money, because there's obviously in most organizations a money aspect attached to value, but value also has to do with your customer satisfaction, your employee satisfaction. What is the value of your software if you make tons of money out of it, but your employees are deeply unhappy all the time, in depressions and burnouts and leaving your companies?
So that's an interesting perspective of value. That value, we are somehow leaping into seeing value as a unidimensional thing, which translates basically to money. And it turns out value is something that is multidimensional. It has more than one dimension.
Yes, absolutely. So value at sort of the essence, the core of value at least is money, employee satisfaction, so that people don't constantly leave and your biggest brain go to other companies or countries. And the other aspect is obviously customer satisfaction. You might be making lots of money with your software, but if your customers are not, if your clients are not really happy, they will probably at some point in time go away, and that's not helping. So there's one aspect, value, but also your ability to sustain that value. You might have good value now.
So what metrics would you recommend? Sorry to interrupt you, but we are running short on time, and I would like to hear some ideas. What kind of metrics to employ on that level of level above teams, looking from the managerial perspective?
So at the product level, it's a software level, very tangible metrics, revenues per employee or return on investment, the money aspect, employee satisfaction, customer satisfaction. On top of that, sort of next level metrics, things like what's your ability to release software frequently? How many releases are you able to produce per month, per year, per quarter, whatever? Because that's an indication of how your ability to sustain that value. And then also the ability to innovate, because you might be producing much value now, but what is valuable right now might not be valuable next year. And if you stick with the same business models, the same business type of customers and opportunities, and you don't look around for possible new value, you might be killing yourself in the long term anyhow.
Mm-hmm. And then what is your take on the popular metrics like cycle time, lead time, those lean metrics, or technical metrics like, for example, defects on production, stuff like that?
Well, they help you define your ability to sustain that value. Cycle time, release times, lead times and so on, that's an indication of your ability to bring new software to the market frequently, regularly. So that might be an indication, and hey, how able are you to sustain your value? And elements like defects and so on, maintenance, support, might be an indication of where am I spending my money? Am I only spending my money on keeping the system up and running or solving lots of problems? Because that's draining the money that you might want to spend in innovation. So that's a good indication of your ability or your inability to innovate.
So if I may comment on your answers, I very much like your business perspective on that, and that's something that I think is also missing in many places in the Agile movement. There's this concentration on the software part with the assumption that some magical business people will take care of the magical business. And we don't care about that, we just produce software. And I think this perspective is too narrow also in implementing and using Scrum, because Scrum is much more than just a tool for developers to produce software, right?
Yeah. So coming back to your original question, where's value for a product owner? Well, that's the essence of product owners. Order your product backlog from that outside perspective, that user perspective, not from the IT or implementation perspective. That's probably an angle that's going to influence how you order your product backlog. But as a product owner, your first concern should be optimizing, maximizing the value of your software, and that's measured on the outside of your organization, not the internal.
Okay.
And remember that even internal users are external people.
Yep. Okay.
Treat them like that.
Okay, thanks for your insight.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Great.